Hello, families. Today we are going to be talking about attention and memory games to play with your child. And you might be thinking, what does attention and memory have to do with language? Well, how we learn different language and vocabulary has a lot to do with something called executive function, which has been a buzzword that you might have heard in different media sources. So executive function has three key parts, which is working memory, which is what we'll be talking about mostly today, flexible thinking, and inhibitory control. So flexible thinking is your ability to problem solve and come up with different solutions to problems and see other people's perspectives. Inhibitory control is your ability to manage your emotions and have that impulse control. And so the other one is working memory, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And working memory is your ability to hold something in your brain and be able to connect it with new incoming information and connecting it with old information you already know. So it's working on both ends. It's holding on to all this new and old information and kind of connecting it. So working memory is really key to learning new vocabulary and concepts. And then, looking at the big picture, working memory is really key for your childhood success in the future with things like reading comprehension, their ability to read a sentence, a paragraph, a chapter, a book, and be able to understand everything that's gone on. Because they're taking all the new information and they're putting it together with information they've already read in the book or already read in that sentence or paragraph, and they're making sense of it. So I have three games or activities to do with your child. I'm going to give you two pieces of advice that have been the best advice I've ever gotten for working with children. Is one, if you're not having fun, your child's not having fun. So you have to have fun too. And then the second one is end the game before the game ends. So that way your child is wanting to play these games. So maybe just tell them when they're like really in the height of it, be like, oh, one more time. And then we have to go and do X. And that keeps them really interested in the game and wanting to do it and asking to do it. So the first game is called Kim's Game. Kim's Game, which is a game that's used by Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to work on observation. Because the first part of our memory is attention, because we have to pay attention to an object, an item, what people are saying to really be putting it into our memory. So what you'll need are all things from around the house. I'm using specifically a cookie tray to hold the objects. And you don't have to have something to hold the objects, but I do recommend using one because it can kind of give your child a defined space of where they are putting their attention. So I have a lot of objects on here. I have maybe over 10, and don't start with 10 with your preschool child, that's a lot. I have sunglasses, a paintbrush, a crayon, a marker, sock, a glove, a fork, a screwdriver, pliers, hairbrush, key, chapstick. All these things are things that you may have laying around your house. If you don't have these objects, you don't have to use these objects. You can use anything you're comfortable with your child using and touching. So with Kim's Game, I would suggest we're starting about 3 objects. We'll use sunglasses, a fork, and a sock. And you put it on the tray or the blanket, whatever you're using to help focus their attention. And you're going to say, okay, try to remember the fork, the sunglasses, and sock. And just kind of help them come up with ways to remember. Okay, we have the fork, the sock, the sunglasses, the fork, the sock, the sunglasses, using that self-talk to help them remember. When you think they remember or they feel like they're confident and they remember, you're going to cover all the objects on the tray. And you can have them immediately try to remember all the objects that were on the tray, or you can do a short activity in between. It can be as short as counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, what was on the tray. Or you can do something a little longer, singing the ABCs, running from one room to another in the house. Because doing that makes them use their attention on something else for a second before coming back and having to use their memory that they were using to store this. So it puts their attention somewhere else and then it goes back to the memory. So then when they are done doing their activity, you count 1, 2, 3. Okay, what was the objects? And you might not remember because we just talked about all these things. So we had the sock, the sunglasses, and the fork. If your child is really successful with 3 objects, move it to 4, 5, keep going on, and see how many they can remember. You can also use a shorter amount of time that they can look at the objects. So maybe you still are using 3 objects, but they only have 5 seconds to remember, or 10 seconds, or however long will be a challenge for them. You can also make it challenging and add some language concepts by using, we'll use a sock, the glove, and the screwdriver. And so you cover it up and you ask them, you do your activity 1, 2, 3. Okay, what were the items that you used that you can wear that were under the blanket? And they have to remember, okay, well, there's a screwdriver and that's not something you can wear. So they don't want to tell you that. I want to tell you the sock and the glove. So that's a concept about what you do with an object. You could also do, if you're using crayons and markers, like what do you use to draw a picture? Or if you're using a spoon and a fork, you could say, what do you use to eat? And that kind of does that concept of what you do with an object or what the object group is. So this is school supplies or this is clothing. The other game is very similar to Kim's game, which is what we just did. It's the what is missing game. And in this one, maybe, again, you're going to start with those 3 objects. We'll do a sock, marker, screwdriver, change these up. And so they have to remember all of these items are. Then you're going to have your child close their eyes and turn around, but make sure they turn around because kids have been known to peek. You're going to take one object away and hide it behind your back in a box. Hide it so they can't see it. And then say, okay, what's missing? That's it. That's the game. And they have to remember. And maybe they're having some trouble. So maybe you get 3 other objects and you say, was it the crayon, the fork, or the marker? What's missing? And that gives them choices if they're having trouble. So that is that game. And again, you can have them do an activity in between. So they have to put their attention on something else, but then go back to their memory, their working memory. Or you can increase the amount of time that they have to memorize the objects to make it a little easier, or you can decrease it to give them a challenge. So that is that game. And these games focus on one more activity with the what's missing. If your child is really into dress up and you have a lot of that, what you can do is dress up in an outrageous outfit. You have a scarf on, gloves on, jewelry, hat, all of these things. And you have your child remember everything that you're wearing, and then you go into another room, take one thing off, and then go back in and say what's missing, and have them try to guess. And maybe they'll do that with you too, and you have to figure it out. So again, have fun with it, because if you're not having fun, your child's not having fun either. So those work on your visual memory, on what you're seeing, because you're seeing each object. And this next activity can really focus on the auditory memory, so what they're hearing. And so you can use this with nothing at all, or you can get things if you have child-friendly instruments, or if you go online, there are so many different ways to make instruments from things you have lying around your house. Or you can use simple wooden spoon, Tupperware, plastic dish as your instrument too, or clapping, stomping, patting your knees, whatever. You start with doing 1 or 2 moves, so clap, pat, and have your child copy you. This is the imitation game. And they do that, and then maybe you're going to add another move. So you're going to clap, pat, stomp, and then your child has to clap, stomp, or pat stomp. And then keep adding on as you go. You can also use an instrument, so clap, bang, whatever. Some language activities you can use with this is adding concepts of like hard and soft, so you can hit it really hard and have them copy how hard or how soft you do it. So the first one was really hard, the second one was really soft. Or you could do a fast and a slow. So go fast, slow. And that kind of adds some language to the activity as well as the attention and memory that you're working on. You can also just do this with your voice. And this is very silly, but just use nonsense words and use different pitch and inflection as you're saying this. So, you, and have them copy you. It's silly. It will make them giggle, but that's okay. That's actually great because it means they're having fun. And two, if they're giggling and everything, that kind of divides their attention a little bit too, and so it makes it a tiny bit more challenging for them, and they don't even know it. So those are some ways to use attention and memory games to work on that working memory. You can also use the game concentration or memory with the tiles that you lay face down and you turn 2 over at a time and try and make a match. I really wanted to give some options of what you can do with things that you have at home. If you have any questions, please reach out, and we hope you have a good day.